Hey everybody on YouTube land, this is Grandmaster Ben Feingold. I'm doing a stream right now. It's Tuesday night, and the stream is going to be made up of the 11 decisive games from the candidates' first half, rounds 1 through 7. There were 11 decisive games out of the 28 played, and we're going to briefly discuss them in lieu of 5 minutes with Ben. I was going to make candidates recaps with 5 minutes with Ben, but I figure I'll stream them instead. So some people are watching live, and most of you are on YouTube after the fact, watching the videos now that Karen made after splicing them from the live stream. So, and as opposed to 5 minutes with Ben, people are actually watching this live, and they can ask their inane questions and so forth. Okay, so first game from the series of candidates games we're going to look at this stream, and we're going to make 11 videos for YouTube. This is video 1, is Fabiano Caruana versus Hikaru Nakamura. This was played in round 1. And this is intentional. FIDE likes when players from the same country in a round robin or double round robin, that's a qualification event, play early. So they were sort of forced to play in the first round. Obviously, they're not going to do anything in cahoots because nobody likes Nakamura. So it's not like, if Nakamura was winning the tournament, Fabi would let him win to win the candidates, or vice versa. But they do it to be safe because you never know. So typically, they like players from the same country to play early and not in the last round so they don't have some funny business going on. It's not really important in this tournament because people aren't going to do that. But you never know. Okay, so Fabi's white. This was round 1. They played sort of a raidy, Catalan, raidy, funny opening. Not very common in the Grandmaster level. Of course, black could have played c5 earlier or e5. Sometimes white plays a3, b4. Sometimes white plays e3. Sometimes white plays d3. Okay, so Fabi immediately attacks the center. Garu develops his knight to e7, which defends the knight on c6 in case this bishop gets open. And we're fighting for the d4 square. So at some point, when there's trades on d4, Hikaru can play knight f5 and control the d4 square. Okay, so they trade on d4. Fabi sacrifices a pawn with b4, trying to open the position up because black's king is in the center. White's already castled. The engine says it's equal. Takes. Okay, now white wants to play queen a4 check, winning the bishop on b4. And Hikaru doesn't want to lose the bishop on b4 because then people will say he's washed. So he castled. Engine agrees. Queen b3, that's fine. Bishop a5. Obviously and frankly, if bishop d6, then c5 wins the bishop. The engine says this is all equal. Knight c3. Knight f5. Which I already explained. This is why Hikaru played knight e7. So he could play knight f5 and pressure d4. Bishop a3. Now, this isn't a Catalan, but it has the Catalan-esque idea of the bishop on g2 being really good and the bishop on c8 sucking. On the other hand, white's probably going to lose the pawn on d4, and Hikaru's going to be a pawn up. On the other hand, bishop on a5 sucks, side of the board. Bishop was on f6, I would take black. Bishop on a5, I don't know. Okay, so Fabi's threatening the rook. And Hikaru's better than Gotham chess. He doesn't sacrifice the rook. Plays rook e8. d5. If instead Hikaru played the Zwischenzug, knight takes d4, attacking the queen, then Fabi would play queen a4, attacking the bishop, while still attacking the rook. So rook e8's best. d5 saving his pawn. The engine says everybody's playing great. Knight d4 attacking the queen. Queen attacks the bishop. Hikaru defends his bishop. Rook on e1 is good, putting pressure here, keeping the pawn on e6 pinned. The engine agrees with that. Bishop d7, attacking the queen, always retreat. Queen d1, there's no other safe square for the queen. Again, the engine says it's equal. Nobody is up material. And Hikaru played c5, which the engine says is the best move. Now, these kinds of positions, it's possible white's going to win the exchange, but always sacrifice the exchange. And in compensation, white's going to have weak white squares around his king, and the knight on d4 is going to be too strong. So he played bishop b2, because the bishop on a3 sucks. So rook b8, you can't give a rook away every move. a4, now the knight can go to b5. Try to get rid of the knight on d4. The engine says it's equal. a6, Hikaru says no, you can't play knight b5. So Fabi takes, so the knight can go to d5. Makes sense. So everybody has their knight on a good square. The engine says it's equal. Queen d6. Bishop takes. Pawn takes. And Fabi says, I want this pawn. Now in this position, black has the advantage of the two bishops, but black's d pawn is weak. Bishop on a5 isn't really well placed. But the knight on d5 is under tremendous pressure. So the engine says it's equal. Okay, the engine says d3 is the best move. Hikaru took. Rook takes check. Bishop takes. Now the bishop on d5 is obviously better than the bishop on a5. But the engine literally doesn't care. The engine says it's equal. Practically, however, white's better. White has a better bishop. Okay, engine likes that. Put it in H. A5 is okay. Queen f6 is okay. And now the engine likes white more than it did before, because before the engine was wrong. Bishop on d5 is just much better than black's bishop. So now Hikaru has to play defense, because white has sort of a free advantage with that nice bishop. Trading queens doesn't offer white much in the endgame, because opposite bishops, white's rook can't get anywhere. So he keeps the queens on the board. Put it in H. And when I was watching this game, I was thinking of the famous White Square Symphony game between Karpov and Kasparov from one of their World Championship matches, which was a Queen's Gambit, where they had the same bishops. White had a white squared bishop, black had a dark squared bishop, and Karpov did what Fabi did, get his queen and bishop lined up. Eventually, Karpov won in 1,000 moves. And in this position, this is really beautiful. Fabi plays rook h1 because he wants to put the rook on the f file. He wants to play rook h4, rook f4, putting pressure on f7. Which he does eventually. Now he wants to sneak his queen in here on h7. Always wants to trade queens. Okay, and he gets his pieces to active squares. although it's not clear what white's threatening. The engine says white's winning because black is in a terrible bind here. And black doesn't have any counterplay. Fabi moves the rook away from f5, so his queen can go to f5, and he can line his queen and bishop up. White's not in a hurry, because black can't really do anything. Then Fabi takes a pawn, complicated, and if queen takes, then bishop d5, but you have to play queen takes. Then rook e6 is forced. Queen g4. So white wins a pawn. And Hikaru tries to draw because it's opposite colored bishops, and without the rooks on the board, it's hard to mate black. The engine just says white's winning. The engine doesn't care. Okay, and then Hikaru was moving his king up. I thought he was going to keep going when I was watching the game live, and Hikaru tricked me by playing king e7. I didn't expect that. The engine doesn't like that. And the engine just says white's winning. White's a pawn up, and black is very inactive. But it's hard for white to break through. Eventually, white takes his pawn majority on the king side and uses it to his advantage. Okay, now this was a very strange part of the game. In this position, the engine wants to play queen check on the back rank, and Fabi played queen e4, which is fine. And now black can make a move like queen d6, and the game goes on forever. Nothing much has happened the last 15 moves. And very strangely, Hikaru, I was watching the game live, Hikaru instantly took the queen, which is a terrible move. Okay, it makes the win very easy. Although it wasn't very easy because Caruana blew it. And now you can take all three ways. And what you should do if you're watching the stream or you're watching on YouTube after the fact, which is most of you, is you should decide what the number one way to take is, then decide what the number two way to take is, and then you'll find out the answer of the correct way to play, which is the third choice, which you didn't think of. And that's why you're all terrible at chess. And trading queens is a big decision, which changes the structure of the game, makes white's king able to move up the board when it couldn't. And in this instance, it gives white an extra passed pawn. C.L. Smith subscribed with Prime. Oh, candidates is spelled wrong. Thank you. Let me fix that. Okay, fixed. Okay, so Hikaru's queen takes is a terrible blunder, and he played it instantly. So he plays a lot of blitz chess. Okay, so you take with a pawn. Now, this pawn is irrelevant. I'm just going to take that. And now you gave me 4-2 on the king side. White's advantage is fortuitous. White is very easily winning now. The engine says plus 4.5. But that didn't, help Fabi not give it away. Okay, and in this position, Fabi made a move I would never think of. If I was white, I would play king f5. Then I would play g5. And I don't understand what the problem is. It looks like white's going to get two passed pawns. White just keeps pushing the pawns until white has two passed pawns. And in most instances, I would guess black's not going to allow takes, and give white these two passed pawns. So that means black's going to take, white takes with a pawn, white plays h6, and white has a passed h pawn and a passed e pawn. So what's the problem? It just looks like resigns. Okay, and Fabi instantly played f5, which I don't understand, because I don't see how white breaks through on the king side now. But the engine says, yeah, that wins. f5's fine. Fabi's better than me. I wouldn't consider f5 because I wouldn't know how to break through on the king side. I don't see a breakthrough. King f5, g5, I see the breakthrough. I see the passed pawns coming. The engine says f5 wins, it doesn't matter. Okay. Now he plays king d5. He ignores this pawn. I wouldn't do that. I would take the pawn, but it doesn't matter. And what Fabi wants to do is push his f pawn. The king goes over and takes it. Then because the pawn's on d4 and Fabi didn't take it, Fabi's going to play king c6 and take this pawn and have a passed c pawn. And possibly take on a5 and have two passed pawns over there. And the engine says it's completely winning, no problem. Okay, so Hikaru does nothing. Then Fabi plays f6, which throws away the win, and now the engine says it's a draw. I would never consider the move f6. I don't even understand f6. Why is white giving a pawn away? Instead, the engine says king takes d4 and bishop e4 both win. I don't understand f6. I don't get it. Just giving pawns away. Okay, so now it's a draw. gf6. I mean, pawn takes, bishop takes is an easy draw. So he plays e6 check. And in this position, Hikaru made the losing move. So f6 was a blunder. Never play f6. And in this position, Hikaru blundered because white's winning idea, which I've already said, is to play king c6, king takes b6, and take the a pawn and queen the queenside pawns. So according to the engine, the game is a draw if black plays king c7, because now we can't do our stuff. Okay, and white can't get any passed pawns anywhere. So the engine line, which is all zeros, it's the engine line, is e7, e8, king here. Now f5 exclam, although f5 is not necessary, but it's a draw, f5. And then bishop to d8. And white can't win because white has no way to win. White is, this pawn isn't going anywhere. King's on f8. This is defended. The draw. Okay, that's the engine line. So if Hikaru had played king c7, he would have drawn the game. So f6 was a terrible blunder from Fabi. Instead, Hikaru played king e7. Now white's winning again because white wins on the queen side. King c6, and now it's an easy win because we take and c5 and take this and all kinds of passed pawns. And then he resigned because I'm going to do that. Truth hurts. That's funny that it's even pawns, but this pawn's blocked and this pawn can't be blocked. Yeah, truth hurts. So after c6, c7, king d7, bishop f5 check, you can't stop the pawn from queening. Now, in my opinion, that game was not Hikaru's fault. That was the fault of his seconds for not analyzing this endgame properly before the tournament. So you can't really blame Hikaru for this game. Okay, that took like 15, 20 minutes. I was supposed to take 5 to 10 minutes. But the game was 83 moves. Truth hurts. Yeah, it's funny. When the tournament started, Trump, who's following the tournament, is rooting for the Americans. And he told Hikaru, he said, I want to make sure that you win a game in the next 24 hours before the tournament started. Then after this game, Trump said, okay, I want you to win a game in the next 24 hours. Then after the second game, Trump said, okay, you got 2 weeks. So he fulfilled the 2-week deadline, Hikaru did.